When retired accountant Walter Finch, a quiet 68-year-old widower, discovers the world of Twitch, he finds an unexpected obsession, supporting a flamboyant, charismatic streamer named CrystalChaos, known for her outrageous antics and heart-to-heart chats. But what starts as harmless tipping spirals into disaster when Walter blows his entire pension on her channel. As his friends and family intervene, Walter's story takes shocking, hilarious, and unexpectedly profound twists that no one saw coming. Walter Finch was not your typical retiree. At 68 years old, he lived a life of quiet simplicity, tending to his rose garden and completing crossword puzzles in his suburban home. A retired accountant and widower for over 15 years, Walter found comfort in routine and predictability. He avoided technology, considering his daughter's gift of a smartphone last Christmas an unnecessary complication. Yet, life has a way of surprising even the most steadfast. One Saturday afternoon, Walter's grandson, Jason, came over for a visit. Jason, a lively teenager perpetually glued to his laptop, was engrossed in watching something online. Walter, curious despite himself, leaned over. "What's got you so entertained?" he asked. Jason grinned and swiveled the screen to face his grandfather. "This streamer, she's hilarious. Check her out." On the screen was a vibrant scene. A young woman with bright pink hair styled in twin buns animatedly shouting at her camera while a video game played in the background. Her energy was infectious, her voice loud and unfiltered. Across the bottom of the screen, her name was displayed in neon letters. CrystalChaos. Walter squinted. "What exactly am I looking at here?" Jason laughed. "It's Twitch, Grandpa. It's a platform where people live-stream themselves doing stuff, mostly playing games. Crystal's one of the top streamers. She's funny and talks to her audience live." Walter watched with skepticism as Crystal bantered with her chat, reading messages and responding as if she were speaking to friends in her living room. "Thanks for the sub, Dragonslayer 92, she exclaimed, blowing a kiss to the camera. "What's a sub?" Walter asked, adjusting his glasses. Jason explained. "It's like tipping. People pay to support her channel, and she shouts them out. It's kind of a big deal." Walter nodded, intrigued despite himself. That night, after Jason had gone home, Walter found his thoughts wandering back to CrystalChaos. Her larger-than-life personality and the way she engaged with her audience felt oddly compelling. With some effort, he opened his laptop, an intimidating machine he rarely touched, and navigated to Twitch. After several false starts, he found her channel and clicked on her live broadcast. Crystal was midstream, her screen ablaze with colors and sounds. "Let's go, Chaos Crew!" she shouted, her excitement palpable. Walter watched for hours, captivated. For the first time in years, he felt part of something, even if it was just as a silent observer. Over the next few days, Walter became a regular viewer. He created an account with the username FinchLegend68 and hesitantly typed his first message in the chat. To his surprise, Crystal noticed him. "Welcome, FinchLegend68, she said, beaming. "Glad to have you here." That simple acknowledgement sent a wave of warmth through Walter. It had been so long since someone outside his family had made him feel seen. Encouraged, he began tipping small amounts, and each time, Crystal's enthusiastic shoutouts filled him with pride. "Thanks, FinchLegend68. You're amazing," she would say, and Walter's chest would swell with a satisfaction he hadn't felt in years. As the weeks passed, Walter's involvement grew. He started gifting subscriptions to other viewers, upgrading his own subscription tier, and sending generous donations. Every shout-out and confetti explosion on the screen felt like a personal victory, a reminder that he was still part of the world. Crystal often shared her dreams of upgrading her streaming setup and building her channel. Walter, inspired by her ambition, wanted to help. "Every little bit helps, guys," she would say, and Walter took it to heart. What began as a few dollars here and there soon became a significant financial commitment. Walter's family started to notice the change. He stayed up late watching streams, his eyes bleary and his demeanor more animated than they had seen in years. When his daughter asked him about it, he waved her off. "I'm just supporting someone who brings joy to people," he said with a dismissive shrug. But Walter's generosity was becoming a problem. He had always been frugal, carefully managing his pension to cover his modest lifestyle. Yet, in the excitement of supporting Crystal's dreams and being part of her community, he had begun to lose track of his spending. By the end of the month, Walter had spent far more than he intended. His bank account, once a source of pride and security, was now alarmingly low. But Walter, blinded by his newfound sense of purpose, dismissed his worries. "It's worth it," he told himself. "She's worth it." What Walter didn't realize was that his obsession was leading him down a precarious path. The quiet, predictable life he had once cherished was slipping away, replaced by the vibrant chaos of Crystal's world. And though he didn't yet know it, this journey would soon force him to confront everything he thought he knew about himself, his values, and what it truly meant to belong. Walter's obsession with CrystalChaos deepened, filling the quiet corners of his life with excitement and purpose. What had begun as light entertainment transformed into a nightly ritual. By 8 p.m. sharp, Walter was seated in his favorite armchair, laptop open, tea in hand, waiting for Crystal's stream to begin. Her laughter and high energy became the soundtrack to his evenings, her cheerful chaos a sharp contrast to the calm predictability of his suburban home. Initially, Walter's tips and subscriptions were modest, a $5 tip here, a gifted subscription there. "It's like buying a ticket to a show," he rationalized, but then he noticed her Chaos Champions leaderboard. It displayed the names of her top supporters who earned frequent shoutouts and recognition. Walter felt an unexpected pang of longing. He wanted to see his username on that leaderboard. One evening, he tipped $50. Crystal's reaction was immediate. "Wow, Finch Legend 68, you're amazing," she exclaimed, her voice brimming with gratitude. The confetti animation that followed his name on the screen made Walter smile wider than he had in months. For the first time in years, he felt genuinely noticed. The praise was addictive. The next night, he tipped again and then again, each time pushing himself to give more. It wasn't just about the recognition, it was about the connection. In a sea of thousands of viewers, Walter stood out. Other chat members began noticing him, too. "Finch is the GOAT," someone typed, and Walter felt his chest swell with pride. It was as though he had carved out a place for himself in a vibrant community. Crystal frequently set fundraising goals. Whether it was upgrading her equipment or funding personal projects, she presented them as collective missions. "Let's do this together, Chaos Crew," she'd cheer, her enthusiasm contagious. Walter couldn't resist. Each donation felt like a step toward building something meaningful, and Crystal's effusive thank yous only reinforced that belief. Walter's grandson, Jason, noticed the change first. "Grandpa, are you spending a lot on this streamer?" Jason asked during one of his visits. Walter waved him off. "It's just a little fun, Jason. Nothing to worry about. Besides, it's nice to feel needed." Jason frowned but didn't press further. Still, his unease lingered in Walter's mind. He shook it off and continued tipping, each interaction with Crystal reaffirming his decision. When she announced a VIP program for her top supporters, offering perks like private group chats, behind-the-scenes content, and personalized thank you videos, Walter eagerly signed up. The cost was high, but the allure of being closer to her was irresistible. When Walter received his first personalized video from Crystal, he was ecstatic. "Hey, Finch Legend 68, she said, smiling warmly into the camera. "Thank you so much for all your support. You're the best Chaos crew member ever." Walter replayed the video dozens of times, showing it proudly to Jason. "You're spending way too much, Grandpa," Jason said, concerned. "What about your savings?" "I've got it under control," Walter replied defensively. But Jason's words planted a seed of doubt. Linda, Walter's daughter, grew suspicious after Jason shared his concerns. One afternoon, she stopped by unannounced and found Walter glued to his laptop, watching Crystal's stream. "Dad, what's going on? Jason says you've been spending money on some streamer," she said, crossing her arms. "It's nothing," Walter said, attempting to close the laptop discreetly, but Linda had seen enough. "Dad, you're retired. You can't afford to waste your savings like this," she said firmly. "Promise me you'll stop." Walter nodded reluctantly, but her words lingered. That evening, as Crystal greeted him with her usual warmth, "Hey, Finch Legend 68, great to see you." His guilt melted away. He tipped another $100, earning yet another heartfelt thank you from her. For a brief moment, the weight on his shoulders lifted. The next morning, reality hit hard. A letter from his bank arrived, and Walter's hands trembled as he opened it. The statement revealed a grim truth. His account balance was dangerously low. His pension, carefully saved over the years, had been drained in just a few months. Walter felt a wave of shame. How could he, a man who had spent decades managing finances, have been so reckless? Determined to fix his mistake, Walter resolved to cut back. He would watch Crystal's streams without tipping, he told himself. But that very night, she announced a new fundraising goal: a trip to Ibiza, a dream vacation she had always wanted. "Let's make it happen, Chaos Crew," she said, her excitement infectious. Walter's finger hovered over the donate button. His heart raced as he debated his options. He wanted to help her, to be her hero, but he knew he couldn't afford it. For the first time, the joy of her streams was overshadowed by the weight of his decisions. As the stream continued, Walter sat frozen, staring at the screen. The chaos that had once brought him happiness now felt suffocating, and for the first time, he wondered if he had lost himself in the process. Walter's world was unraveling. The revelation of his nearly drained bank account left him reeling. For days, he avoided Crystal's streams, his once vibrant evenings replaced with uneasy silence. He spent hours poring over his finances, trying to calculate how long he could stretch what little remained of his pension. Each number felt like a dagger, a painful reminder of how far he had strayed from the careful, practical man he once was. But staying away wasn't easy. Walter's nights felt empty without Crystal's laughter, her boundless energy filling the void he didn't know he had. He missed the sense of belonging, the thrill of being part of her chaos crew. Despite his better judgment, he opened Twitch one evening, telling himself he'd just watch, nothing more. Crystal's stream was as lively as ever. Her screen was vibrant, her pink hair bouncing as she greeted her audience. "Welcome back, Chaos Crew," she shouted, her grin infectious. Walter typed a simple greeting, "Hello, everyone," and was surprised when she noticed. "Finch Legend 68, I missed you," Crystal said, her smile widening. "Where have you been? The crew hasn't been the same without you." Walter felt a pang of guilt, but her words filled him with warmth. Despite his self-imposed restrictions, he tipped a small amount, just $5. Crystal's gratitude was immediate, wrapping around him like a warm hug. For a moment, he felt like himself again. But the guilt returned quickly. The numbers in his bank account haunted him, and even the small tip felt like a betrayal of his promises. Determined to regain control, Walter searched online for help and found a support group for seniors struggling with online spending. Hesitant, but desperate, he decided to attend. The group met in a modest community center, its beige walls lined with folding chairs. Walter felt out of place as he shuffled inside, his nerves heightened by the unfamiliar setting. But as he listened to the others share their stories, he realized he wasn't alone. There were others like him, people who had been swept up in the thrill of online communities, only to find themselves in financial trouble. One woman, Edna, stood out. A retired librarian with a sharp wit, she said, "I spent $3,000 on a fundraiser for a cat sanctuary. Turns out the cats were fine." Walter chuckled, her humor breaking through his embarrassment. After the meeting, Edna approached him. "First time?" she asked, her smile kind. Walter nodded. "I didn't think I'd end up here." "None of us did," Edna said. "But hey, it's a start." They struck up a conversation, and by the end of the night Walter felt lighter. Edna invited him to volunteer at the library's tech literacy program, suggesting it might help him reconnect with the real world. The next week, Walter nervously taught a class of seniors how to navigate the internet. At first, he felt out of his element, fumbling through explanations, but as the session progressed, he found his rhythm. Teaching reminded him of the sense of fulfillment he used to feel in his career, and for the first time in months, he felt grounded. The seniors were eager learners, and Walter's patience and humor made the experience enjoyable for everyone. But just as Walter began to find his footing, a notification from Twitch disrupted his newfound stability. Crystal had sent him a direct message. "Hey, Finch, just wanted to check in. Hope you're doing okay." Walter's heart raced. The message was kind, but it reignited the conflict within him. He missed being part of her world, yet he knew the cost of returning. Still, he replied, "Thanks, Crystal. I'm okay, just taking a break." Her reply came quickly. "You're such an important part of the crew. Let me know if you want to chat." The words lingered, pulling him back, but this time he approached cautiously, watching her streams sparingly and avoiding tipping. Each day felt like a small victory, a reminder that he could still enjoy her content without losing himself. Meanwhile, his connection with Edna grew. They began meeting weekly, sharing stories of their digital missteps and supporting each other's efforts to rebuild. Edna's humor and optimism were infectious, and Walter found himself laughing more than he had in years. Together, they brainstormed ways to help the community through their work at the library, from hosting workshops to fundraising events. One afternoon, as they worked on a fundraiser idea, Edna turned to Walter. "You know, this CrystalChaos thing isn't just about her, is it?" Walter hesitated. "What do you mean?" "You were looking for something. Connection, maybe, or purpose. And she gave you that, even if it got out of hand." Walter nodded slowly, her insight hitting home. "I guess I didn't realize how lonely I'd become." Edna smiled. "Well, you're not alone anymore." Her words stayed with Walter as he navigated his new normal. Crystal's streams still held a place in his life, but they no longer consumed him. With Edna's help, he began focusing on rebuilding, not just his finances, but his sense of self. And for the first time in a long time, Walter felt hopeful. The chaos no longer controlled him. He had found balance. Walter's life was finally finding balance, but just as he began to feel secure, an unexpected twist arrived in the form of an email. The sender was none other than CrystalChaos herself. "Hey Finch," it began. "I've been reading about all the amazing things you're doing in your community. I'd love to visit your library and do something special for your seniors." Walter's jaw dropped. He reread the email multiple times, unsure if it was real. Why would someone as popular as Crystal want to visit his small community? For a moment, he was excited, imagining the joy her visit would bring. But the excitement quickly turned to dread. What would people think if they knew the truth about how much he had spent on her streams? After days of deliberation, Walter confided in Edna. They sat in the library's break room, the hum of the coffee machine filling the silence as Walter hesitantly handed her his phone. Edna read the email carefully, her expression unreadable. "Well," she said finally, "this is unexpected, but it's also an opportunity." "An opportunity for what?" Walter asked, his voice tinged with panic. "To embarrass myself in front of the entire town?" Edna shook her head. "To show people how much you've grown. Look, you can't change the past, but you've already done so much to move forward. Maybe this is a chance to turn it into something positive." Walter wasn't convinced, but he couldn't deny the possibility. After much encouragement from Edna, he replied to Crystal's email, thanking her for her kind words and inviting her to visit. "Let me know what kind of event you have in mind," he wrote, trying to keep his tone casual despite his nerves. Crystal's response was almost immediate. She suggested hosting a live-stream fundraiser to support the library's tech programs. "We can combine your love for community work with my Chaos Cruise energy," she wrote. Walter was both impressed and terrified by the idea. The thought of appearing on a live stream with thousands of viewers made his palms sweat, but he couldn't deny the potential impact. As the day of Crystal's visit approached, the library buzzed with anticipation. Edna organized a team of volunteers to prepare, and Walter spent hours rehearsing his role in the event. He would introduce Crystal, share his story, and explain the library's mission. It sounded simple enough, but the pressure of speaking in front of a camera made him second-guess everything. When the day arrived, the library was packed. Crystal entered like a whirlwind, her pink hair as vibrant as her personality. She greeted everyone with hugs and high-fives, her energy contagious. Walter was struck by how genuine she seemed, her warmth cutting through his nerves. "Finch!" she exclaimed when she saw him. "It's so good to finally meet you in person." Walter smiled awkwardly. "You too, Crystal. Thanks for coming." The event began with Crystal chatting with the crowd, her charisma keeping everyone engaged. Then it was Walter's turn. As he stepped up to the podium, the room quieted. He looked out at the faces of his friends, neighbors, and even a few Chaos crew members who had traveled to see Crystal. "My name is Walter Finch," he began, his voice trembling, "and I've made a lot of mistakes." The room was silent, the weight of his words hanging in the air. Walter took a deep breath and continued, recounting his journey from financial recklessness to finding purpose through the library. He didn't shy away from the truth, admitting how he had let his obsession with Crystal's streams get out of hand. But he also spoke of the lessons he had learned, the friendships he had built, and the importance of community. By the time he finished, the room erupted in applause. Walter felt a mix of relief and pride. Crystal took the stage next, praising Walter's honesty and resilience. "Walter's story shows us the power of second chances," she said, her voice earnest. "And that's what this fundraiser's about, giving people the tools they need to learn and grow." The live-stream fundraiser was a resounding success. Donations poured in from viewers around the world, and the library surpassed its goal within hours. Crystal stayed long after the event ended, chatting with attendees and taking pictures. She even joined Edna and Walter for coffee, where they talked about everything from streaming to gardening. As the evening wound down, Crystal turned to Walter. "You know, Finch, you've inspired me. I think it's time for me to take a step back and figure out how I can give back more, too." Walter was stunned. "You're already doing so much," he said. Crystal shook her head. "I've been so focused on growing my channel that I forgot why I started in the first place. Meeting you reminded me of the bigger picture." For the first time, Walter felt like he wasn't just a fan. He was someone who had made a difference. When Crystal left, the library was filled with a sense of accomplishment. Walter looked around at the smiling faces of the volunteers and attendees, his heart swelling with gratitude. He had faced his fears, owned his mistakes, and turned them into something meaningful. And as he locked up the library that night, he realized that his journey was far from over. But this time, he was walking a path he could be proud of. Walter's life had taken a dramatic turn, but the after-effects of Crystal's visit were greater than he ever anticipated. The fundraiser's success garnered attention far beyond their small town. Articles about the event appeared on local news sites, and soon national outlets picked up the story. From chaos to community, how a retiree turned his Twitch obsession into purpose, was one headline that made Walter's face flush with a mix of pride and embarrassment. At first, the attention felt overwhelming. Walter wasn't used to being in the spotlight, and seeing his story shared with the world left him feeling exposed. But as emails and letters started pouring in, he realized just how much his journey resonated with others. Messages came from people of all ages. Some shared their own struggles with online addiction, while others simply thanked him for inspiring them to reconnect with their communities. One email stood out. It was from a man named Rick, a father who admitted to spending thousands of dollars on online games. "Reading about you made me realize I'm not alone," Rick wrote. "I've been ashamed of my habits for years, but seeing how you turn things around gives me hope. Thank you." Walter was deeply moved. For so long, he had thought of himself as a foolish old man who had lost his way. But now, he saw that his story had the power to help others, to show them that it was never too late to change. With Edna's encouragement, Walter embraced this new chapter of his life. Together, they organized more events at the library focusing on digital literacy, financial management, and fostering real-world connections. Walter even began giving talks at community centers, sharing his experiences and lessons. To his surprise, he found that he enjoyed public speaking. Each time he stepped onto a stage, he felt a little more confident, his message resonating with audiences. Meanwhile, Crystal stayed in touch. She sent updates about her channel, sharing how the fundraiser had inspired her to make changes. "I'm focusing more on meaningful interactions with my crew," she wrote. "Your story reminded me why I started streaming, to connect with people and make a positive impact." Walter was glad to see her thriving, but he also felt a sense of closure. For the first time, he didn't feel the need to watch her streams every night. His interactions with Crystal had transformed from fan worship to a genuine friendship built on mutual respect. As the months went by, Walter's life became busier than ever. He was no longer just the quiet retiree tending to his roses. He was a community leader, a mentor, and a source of inspiration. But amidst all the changes, one thing remained constant: his connection with Edna. Their friendship had blossomed into something deeper, though neither had spoken about it outright. They spent more time together, planning events, sharing meals, and taking long walks in the park. One evening, as they sat on a bench overlooking a serene lake, Edna turned to Walter with a mischievous smile. "You know," she said, "I think you've spent enough time saving the world. Maybe it's time to focus on yourself for a bit." Walter chuckled. "And what do you suggest I do?" "Well," Edna said, her smile softening, "you could start by taking me to dinner." Walter blinked, caught off guard, but then a grin spread across his face. "I think I'd like that," he said. Their first date was simple but perfect. They dined at a cozy restaurant in town, laughing over stories from their pasts and discovering how much they had in common. For the first time in years, Walter allowed himself to think about the possibility of love, of companionship beyond friendship. As their relationship deepened, so did Walter's sense of purpose. With Edna by his side, he felt more grounded than ever. Together, they continued to build programs at the library, expanding their reach and helping even more people in the community. They joked that they made the perfect team. Edna was the dreamer, and Walter was the planner. One day, as they worked on a proposal for a new mentorship program, Walter's phone buzzed. It was a message from Crystal. "Guess what? I'm coming to town again next month. Let's catch up." Walter showed the message to Edna, who raised an eyebrow. "Looks like your pink-haired friend isn't done with you yet." Walter laughed. "She's full of surprises, isn't she?" When Crystal returned, she was different, more grounded, more focused. She spoke at the library about balancing online life with real-world connections, sharing her own journey of growth. "Walter taught me that it's okay to pause, to reflect, and to reconnect," she said to a packed room. "Sometimes the chaos needs a little calm." After her talk, Crystal pulled Walter aside. "You've really built something incredible here," she said. "I'm so proud of you." "Couldn't have done it without you," Walter replied warmly. Crystal shook her head. "No, Finch. This was all you." As Walter watched her leave that evening, he felt a deep sense of gratitude. His life had taken a path he never could have imagined, one filled with mistakes, growth, and unexpected joys. And as he turned to find Edna waiting for him, her smile as bright as ever, he realized that the best chapters of his story were still being written. Walter Finch had come full circle, but the ending wasn't the one he had imagined. It was better. Months after Crystal's second visit, Walter sat in his rose garden, the sun warming his face as he reflected on the journey that had brought him here. His life, once defined by quiet routines and hidden regrets, had transformed into a vibrant mosaic of community, purpose, and love. The library had become a hub of activity, with new programs rolling out almost every month. Walter and Edna's mentorship initiative had taken off, pairing seniors with younger members of the community to exchange skills and stories. It was a program that bridged generations, and Walter took pride in seeing the connections it fostered. Walter had also embraced his new role as a mentor and speaker, visiting other libraries and community centers to share his story. His talks focused on resilience, the power of connection, and the importance of seeking help when needed. Each time he stood in front of an audience, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. The man who once doubted his place in the world was now inspiring others to find theirs. But it wasn't just the library or his work that had changed. Walter had changed. He had learned to forgive himself for his mistakes, to embrace the messiness of life, and to find joy in the unexpected. In doing so, he had discovered a capacity for resilience and love he never knew he had. One afternoon, as Walter finished pruning his roses, his phone buzzed with a notification. It was a message from Crystal. "Hey, Finch, thought you'd like to know. I just hit a milestone, 1 million followers. Thank you for being part of this journey. Couldn't have done it without you." Walter smiled, typing back a quick reply. "Congratulations, Crystal. You've earned it. Keep inspiring." The message was a reminder of how far they had both come. Crystal had grown from a streamer chasing numbers to someone who genuinely cared about the impact she made. Walter was proud to have been part of her journey, just as she had been part of his. Later that evening, Walter and Edna hosted a community dinner at the library, a celebration of the programs they had built together. As the room filled with laughter and the clinking of glasses, Walter took a moment to step back and take it all in. He spotted Edna across the room, chatting animatedly with one of the library volunteers. She caught his eye and gave him a warm smile, the kind that made his heart swell. Walter raised his glass in her direction and she mirrored the gesture. In that moment, he realized something profound. His life wasn't just about fixing the mistakes of the past. It was about building something meaningful in the present, about embracing the people and moments that made it worthwhile. After the dinner, Walter and Edna walked home together, the crisp night air filled with the scent of blooming flowers. "You've come a long way, Finch," Edna said, her voice soft. "I couldn't have done it without you," Walter replied, his tone equally tender. Edna smiled, looping her arm through his. "Well, you're stuck with me now." Walter chuckled. "I wouldn't have it any other way." The next morning, Walter woke to a package on his doorstep. It was from Crystal. Inside was a handwritten note and a framed photo of the two of them from the library fundraiser. The note read, "To Finch, the Chaos Crew's greatest legend. Thank you for showing me the power of connection." Walter placed the photo on his mantle, a symbol of the journey that had brought him here. It was a journey filled with twists and turns, with mistakes and redemption, but one that had ultimately led him to a life he was proud of. As Walter sat in his living room, Edna beside him, he looked at the photo and then at the woman who had become his partner in every sense of the word. "You know," he said, his voice light, "if someone had told me a year ago that I'd end up here, I would have laughed in their face." Edna laughed. "Life's funny like that, isn't it? It has a way of surprising you when you least expect it." Walter nodded. "Here's to more surprises." Edna raised her mug of tea in a toast. "To surprises." A week later, the library received another unexpected surprise. A major grant had been approved for their mentorship program, allowing them to expand their reach even further. Walter and Edna celebrated the news with the volunteers, their shared vision for the future growing brighter by the day. One afternoon, as they reviewed plans for new library initiatives, Walter glanced at the framed photo Crystal had sent him. It was a reminder of where his journey began, a testament to the chaos that had led him to this point. "Funny how life works out," he mused. Edna, seated beside him, smiled knowingly. Sometimes it takes a little chaos to find clarity. As they stood in the library that evening, sunlight streaming through the windows, Walter realized something. His story wasn't just about redemption. It was about the beauty of starting over, of building something new from the ashes of the past. And as he turned to Edna, her hand resting lightly on his arm, he knew that the best chapters of his life were still ahead.